Live from the BDN Studios, it's Bang and Dang.
That's awesome.
If you don't like that, then
You ain't black.
Welcome back to Battles of the American Civil War with your hosts, Bang and Dang. Continued on with the battles during the Vicksburg campaign, which we have a couple more today before next week's. Actually, I think we have two battles for you today. The second one, I believe, actually is going to be part of the Gettysburg campaign, which is Second Battle of Winchester for that one. But first up, we got the Battle of Lake Providence during the Vicksburg campaign, June 9th, 1863, in which Confederate troops from the Trans-Mississippi Department were trying to relieve Union pressure during the siege of Vicksburg. Early 1863, as we know, Ulysses S. Grant began a campaign against the Vicksburg, which was held by Confederate troops, obviously. Late April, the Union troops crossed the Mississippi River from Louisiana to Mississippi, south of Vicksburg. May 18th, Grant's troops had surrounded Vicksburg and placed the city under siege, where we're at right now. During the early part of the campaign, Grant had operated a supply depot at Milliken's Bend, which we covered last episode, but by the time of the siege, Grant had established a different supply line, decreasing the importance of Milliken's Bend, but it didn't stop the Confederates because they still messed around over there and did dumb shit.
Idiots. Yeah, they're starting to make some really bad decisions. Well, I mean, they always have, but this is even getting worse now. And the Union seems to be getting a little bit better under Grant, or at least wherever Grant's at. I'd have to say it's a pretty shitty war for the rest of the world to see a newly United States. They can't even...
Well, imagine...
Britain's like, how the hell did they beat us?
Yeah, imagine Britain. They're like probably like, what the hell, dude? How come we couldn't take these guys out?
Twice.
Right.
Even though we did let Britain get to Washington, D.C.
Well, what are you going to do?
Well, Ulysses S. Grant still kept minor supply points at Milliken's Bend, Young's Point, and Lake Providence in Louisiana. The sites were also used to train newly recruited United States colored troops. Mm-hmm. The colored troops were not intended to be used as frontline combat soldiers, so they had only received very little military training. Yeah, they're like, I don't know if we can trust these guys or this and that. They're going to flee the first chance they get. But
Well, we saw how that played out in the last couple episodes, battles at least.
Right. And all the positions that Grant had were all garrisoned by white troops. Jefferson Davis, the Confederate president, pressured E. Kirby Smith, the commander of the Trans-Mississippi Department, to undertake an offensive in Louisiana to take some of the pressure off of Vicksburg. The Confederates did not know at this time that events had rendered Milliken's Bend of lower importance to Grant. The Confederate, don't they have...
Apparently not. Their scouts aren't doing anything for them.
Jeez. The Confederate Trans-Mississippi effort to help Vicksburg would be conducted by Major General Richard Taylor, using an infantry division from Texas known as Walker's Greyhounds.
Right. Taylor preferred to strike against Nolens and conducted the campaign with subdued enthusiasm. Confederate cavalry occupied Richmond, Louisiana on June 3rd, and Major General John George Walker's troops reached Richmond on June 6th. Taylor then planned a three-pronged strike for the next day, which would consist of Confederate troops to attack Milliken's Bend, Young's Point, and Lake Providence. The strike at Lake Providence was commanded by Colonel Frank Bartlett, who was responsible for Confederate forces operating in the Lake Providence area, clearly, and consisted of the 13th Louisiana Cavalry Battalion and the 13th Texas Cavalry Regiment, a force totaling about 9 hundo. That's it. Bartlett had orders to destroy the Union camp at Lake Providence and then destroy the Union-run plantations between that point and Milliken's Bend.
You know what? If the Confederates were smart and they would have thought, they should have defended Nolens and Baton Rouge in that area like they did Richmond. They have both of those like that because basically Nolens is the capital. You got the Mississippi run everything from the Gulf all the way up. As soon as they lost that, ever since they lost them,
I think they tried, but New Orleans is too wide open because you had the whole Gulf right there.
Right, and we have no, the Confederates have no...
No, you said it right.
The Confederates have no navy.
Right. So it's not like they could blockade around their city.
Right. Which is true there. But I guess because if they took whatever navy they did have and brought it down there, they left the whole Mississippi.
Exactly.
Man, they were screwed from the get-go.
Yep.
Confederate forces...
As it was, they were already stealing what American ships they could.
Yeah,
because they didn't have their own.
And those were the shitty ones.
Right.
The Confederate force gathered at Floyd, Louisiana, where a bridge across the Bayou Macon was constructed. However, Bartlett decided to cross the bayou elsewhere,
Okay, just construct a bridge for no reason.
instead moving his troops to Caledonia. The Confederate finally crossed Bayou Macon on the 9th of June, 2 days late. Usually it's the north that's late. After crossing the bayou, Bartlett struck a Union outpost at Bunch's Bend on the Mississippi River, and then continued along the shore of an oxbow lake known as Lake Providence. Only 600 Confederates were present for this stage of the advance. When the Confederates reached Bayou Baxter, 6 miles from their objective, they made contact with a picket force consisting of 2 companies from the 1st Kansas Mounted Infantry Regiment. Outnumbered, the Kansans withdrew. Damn.
Outnumbered, and they only had 600 people? Jeez.
Right. They didn't have 600
Well,
guys.
as a picket force. Pickets usually are only maybe 100.
Right. The Kansans withdrew, and a messenger informed Brigadier General Hugh T. Reed, the Union commander at Lake Providence, of the Confederate advance. He's like, dude,
They're coming for us. Well, the withdrawal crossed the Bayou Tensas,
Sure.
where the Union forces burned the bridge over the bayou. During this stage of the action, the Confederates captured 9 supply wagons and 36 mules.
dang.
Having learned of the Confederate advance, Reed brought up his full 800-man force. Bayou Tensas was only 1 mile from the town. The Confederates reached the wreck bridge over Bayou Tensas before Reed's main force did, and after sending out skirmishers and deploying a 6-pounder field gun, they had military pioneers attempt to rebuild the bridge. Before this could be completed, Reed's force arrived, though. The Union commander deployed men from the 1st Kansas and the 16th Wisconsin Infantry Regiments, and Union sharpshooters were sent forward. Said, you better not let these guys rebuild this damn bridge.
Union fire forced the Confederate cannon to withdraw. After the piece fired 5 shots, the 2 sides continued to shoot at each other for another hour and a half with no effect. Maybe a little.
Right.
At dusk, Bartlett withdrew most of the Confederate force, leaving behind only a group of skirmishers. Reed withdrew his previously engaged men and deployed the 8th Louisiana Infantry Regiment, which were African descent,
Yeah.
which was a colored unit. The Union unit fired several volleys into the Confederates, who withdrew. Bartlett believed that Reed had more men than he actually had,
These guys always, it's a common theme.
and he did not attempt to cross the Bayou Tensas at any points downstream from the Union position. Although historian John D. Winters believes such a movement would have been feasible. Yes,
Sure
he could have
would
went
have.
down and it would have
Right.
been fine.
Well, 1 Union soldier was wounded during the fight, while the Confederates lost 2 men killed and 5 wounded. By June 10th, Bartlett's men were back at Floyd. The only thing they had accomplished during the affair was the destruction of a cotton gin. The attack on Milliken's Bend had been defeated in the Battle of Milliken's Bend, which we just did last episode, and little came of the strike against Young's Point. Winters, the historian, blames Taylor for the failure of the Confederate offensive, suggesting that he should instead have concentrated his troops. Right. While Taylor broke off his campaign, Walker's men remained in the area. Walker withdrew from Richmond after his men were attacked on June 15th, which we'll get to. Confederate troops captured a small Union camp in the Battle of Goodrich Landing on June 29th, which we'll get to. And we all know Vicksburg surrendered July 4th, which was the fall of the city and represented a major Confederate defeat.
that's
That
not the only-
along with Gettysburg.
Yeah, that's not the only.
And speaking of Gettysburg, I think we have the first action in the campaign of Gettysburg coming up right now.
Okay, so that's called the Second Battle of Winchester. Fought between June 13th and 15th, 1863 in Frederick County and Winchester, Virginia, as part of the Gettysburg Campaign. After the Battle of Brandy Station on the 9th of June, 1863.
I guess Brandy Station probably was at Gettysburg, wasn't it?
General Lee ordered Ewell's 19,000-man Second Corps Army of Northern Virginia to clear the lower Shenandoah Valley of Union opposition so that Lee's army could proceed on its invasion of Pennsylvania,
Yep.
shielded by the Blue Ridge Mountains from Union interference.
Those very same Blue Ridge Mountains that he surrenders in?
Crazy. Union General-in-Chief Henry Wager Halleck expressed great concerns about the Middle Department's defensive strategy for its primary objective of protecting the Baltimore and Ohio Railroad. I mean, you got to protect the railroad, right?
Especially a corridor.
All right. Brigadier General Benjamin Franklin Kelly, commander of the Railroad Division, Department of Harper's Ferry, had been advised that his plan, along with Major General Milroy's and Major General Robert Schnack's, commander of the Middle Department, was unsound, supposedly. Headquarters, 8th Army Corps, Baltimore, January 5th, 1863. The following telegrams received today from Major General Halleck, General-in-Chief. It states, Major General Schnack. No
Schenck.
attempt. Shank. Yeah, Shank. No attempt should be made to hold Winchester against a large force of the enemy. ... He knows, right? General Halleck does not quite agree with General Schenck and yourself as to policy of covering and protecting the road, principally by keeping up advanced post at Leesburg, Winchester, and Romney. W.M.D. Whipple, Assistant Adjutant General. Oh my!
Adjutant, right?
Adjutant General.
Lieutenant General Richard Ewell's force of 19,000 men consisted of the division of Major General Jubal Early, with the brigades of Brigadier Generals Harry T. Hayes, William Extra Billy Smith, John B. Gordon, and Isaac E. Avery. The division of Major General Robert E. Rhodes, with the brigades of Brigadier Generals Junius Daniel, George P. Doles, Alfred Iverson, Stephen Dotson Ramsor, and Colonel Edward O'Neill.
It's probably Stephen.
Right. The division of Major General Edward Allegheny Johnson, with the brigades of Brigadier Generals George H. Stewart, James A. Walker of the Stonewall Brigade, John M. Jones, and Colonel Jesse M. Williams for Nichols Brigade. The unattached 1st Maryland Battalion, the Cavalry Brigade of Brigadier General Albert G. Jenkins, and the Corps Artillery Reserve under Colonel J. Thompson Brown.
Fantastic. Well, the Union side, 2nd Division, 8th Corps, Middle Department, Major General Robert Milroy's force of 6,900 consisted of 3 infantry brigades under Brigadier General Washington L. Elliott and Colonels Andrew McReynolds and William Ely, and 2 small outposts northwest of town under Colonel Joseph W. Kiefer. Army of Northern Virginia.
No, then you shouldn't read that.
Ewell's movements were coordinated as part of an overall orchestration of the Army of Northern Virginia into position for crossing the Potomac toward Pennsylvania by using the Blue Ridge Mountains as a screen.
Right.
Same thing Lee wanted to do.
This says Lee.
Oh, right. Yeah, sorry. Sorry, guys. Sorry.
And he commands the Army of Northern Virginia.
Right. This strategic offensive maneuver was put into effect on the 3rd of June, 1863, when Robert E. Lee stated his intent to transfer the scene of hostilities beyond the Potomac.
He's like, I'm tired of fighting in our own damn yard. We got to take it to them now.
Right. And he's like, we're going to move in a concealed fashion down in the Shenandoah Valley. Well, you got General Longstreet's 1st Corps via Snicker's Gap and Hill's 3rd Corps via Ashby's Gap, paralleled the movements of the 2nd Corps to the east through Berryville, Virginia. Then you had Stewart's Cavalry Division was under orders for careful synchronization and screening for Lee's army by conducting demonstrations and screening actions along the A&V's right flank east of the Blue Ridge. You should have been doing this down in Louisiana.
Right. Well, from June 4th to 11th, the 2nd Corps left Hamilton's Crossing on June 4th and marched to Culpeper, Virginia, arriving on June 7th.
That's the Confederate.
Right. The receiving intelligence that Union forces, I could have just read that, they would have known. Receiving intelligence that Union forces had crossed the Rappahannock River in force, Lee ordered Ewell northeast to Brandy Station, Virginia on June 9th to support Major General Jeb Stuart's action in the Battle of Brandy Station, which we've done already, I believe, only to find that the Union forces already were retreating.
Oh, wow.
Ewell resumed the march on June 10th, and on June 11th, Early and Johnson's divisions marched via the Sperryville Turnpike to Gaines Crossroads, while Rhodes's division took the Richmond Road towards Flint Hill. On the evening of the 11th, after consulting with General Lee, Ewell met with Early, Johnson, and the 2nd Corps topographer Jedediah Hotchkiss to discuss approach routes and a general plan for the 2nd Corps' objective to capture Winchester and Martinsburg.
These guys can be like, all right, we got to do this shit. Seriously.
June 12th, 2nd Corps passed through Chester's Gap southeast of Front Royal, Virginia, approaching along the Front Royal Pike, which is modern US 522. There, the 2nd Corps was joined by its cavalry brigade under the command of Brigadier General Albert Jenkins, and Ewell consulted with Early and Jenkins to form his corps-level plan of action, composed of splitting the corps into 2 basic independent movements, which the North would intercept and cut off maneuver to Berryville and Martinsburg.
All right.
Units in that was going to be Rhodes's division and Jenkins' cavalry brigade, and they were going to move north through Berryville, Virginia to Martinsburg, West Virginia.
Right.
The objective was to capture, if possible, McReynolds' force of 1,800 men stationed at Berryville, and then to press north to Martinsburg.
Yep, got to keep it going north.
The main strike maneuver to Winchester was Early's division, Johnson's division, and the 16th Virginia Cavalry Battalion. of Jenkins' brigade. They were going to move northwest to Winchester, Virginia.
Look at that.
And the objective was to attack the fortifications in Winchester and Milroy's force of 6,000 to 8,000 men.
Ooh, they're looking for a battle.
Yeah, by the end of the day on June 12th, Rhodes' division was 5 miles north of Front Royal, encamped at Stone Bridge, while Johnson's division arrived at Cedarville, and Early's division was encamped near the Shenandoah River.
I mean, they got a nice little plan there.
About to take it.
By April, 4 months into his occupation of Winchester, Milroy's loose grip on Confederate raiding in the lower Shenandoah Valley caused enough concern for the Middle Department commander, Schenck, to directly order Milroy to post one brigade further to the east at Berryville. It's like, dude, come on. All this progress was made, and you're just ready to just give it up.
All right.
Well, this move offered a base of operations to patrol crossings at the Shenandoah River and look out for Confederates raiding in and out of both Snickers Gap and Ashby's Gap in the Blue Ridge Mountains on the eastern border of the valley. If he didn't do that, they wouldn't even know.
Right.
It's good call by Schenck. Lee was counting on Milroy to be a lazy prick. He's just letting us do this shit.
He was, look out for raiders on Snickers Gap and Ashby's Gap. That's where both of them were going.
Right.
Nice.
In response, Milroy posted McReynolds' brigade in Berryville with orders to evacuate to Winchester upon the signal of the firing of one of the heavy artillery guns.
All right. Well, Milroy stationed pickets and vedettes around Winchester, but they were positioned too close to Winchester due to bushwhacking of his patrols.
Right.
Therefore, Milroy had practically no surveillance of the situation around himself. His caution in posting outlying vedettes was perhaps due to the severe losses he incurred in trying to suppress various Confederate cavalry raids that kept occurring in his district, such as on the 26th of February, when he sent the 1st New York Cavalry and the 13th Pennsylvania Cavalry out to pursue raiders. They met the 7th and 11th Virginia Cavalry under the command of Colonel O.R. Funston and suffered a devastating loss of 197 Federal cavalry, including 12 officers.
The Union had nothing on the Confederate cavalry.
Cavalry sucks, man.
Oh my goodness! If the Confederates were smarter, they would have realized, hey, let's just put our guys on horses.
All right, every single one of our guys are cavalry now.
Right. It's crazy stuff. You would think. Well, I mean, it makes sense. More people are riding horses in the South than they were up north, even though everybody was still riding horses everywhere.
I mean, the horses didn't mean anything. So we already established once they got into battle range, they got off their horses and fought like infantry anyways.
Right. But still, they're just better on their horses than doing the navigating everything.
I guess.
Plus, I guess, too, most of the fighting happened in the South.
Right.
Milroy also often recorded many other grand-sounding cavalry excursions, supposedly capturing or killing many of the Colonel John Mosby's Rangers in the weeks and months leading up to June. However, the records of Mosby's Rangers do not corroborate or mention most of these engagements, so Milroy's lying.
Right.
Milroy's farthest outlying vedettes to the south were located at or near Parkin's Mill Battery at the Opequon Creek crossing, a mere 4 miles south of Winchester. This dude, look at this guy.
He's got to bust up his battle resume,
I guess. Other reports of Federal vedettes to the west of Winchester were never seen or encountered by Confederate forces.
Right. Well, Winchester was heavily fortified by forts and lunettes circumferencing the town, as well as along the outlying turnpike routes entering town. Within Winchester, Milroy constructed or improved 10 defensive fortifications numbered Battery 1 through 10, making improvements on many pre-existing forts and fortifications left by prior Confederate and Federal occupations.
All right.
The fortifications were linked in places with roads and trenches, and the use of these were a key to Milroy's defensive strategy. Through a combination of retreating his forces into the defensive works and then using his long-range heavy artillery, Milroy felt that he could hold out for weeks, if not months, against any force that may be thrown against him. During the battle, Milroy concentrated his forces on the ridges west of town and his 3 highest and most improved forts connected by trenches.
Ooh, well, the larger forts were named. Battery number 2, Fort Milroy. Originally built by Confederate troops and called the fortification on the Heights, or the main fort. This was improved under Major General Banks and called Fort Garibaldi by the 39th New York Regiment. The fort was improved extensively by Milroy's troops and held 14 guns. including heavy artillery, and renamed Fort Milroy, but then renamed Fort Jackson after the battle. Okay. Milroy just wasn't good enough.
Guess not.
Then you had Battery Number 3, which is Star Fort. This fort was built by federal troops in 1862, improved by Milroy, and equipped with 8 guns, and is also renamed Fort Alabama. Moving on to Battery Number 5, which is called West Fort. This was a 4-gun lunette located due west of Fort Milroy, later renamed Louisiana Heights. The lesser fortifications initially used, but abandoned by Milroy during the course of the battle, were Battery 1, a linear entrenchment lunette along the Bowers Hill south of Fort Milroy. Battery Number 4, a large Star lunette with entrenchments and minor lunettes containing 6 guns located due north of Fort Star, along the same ridge line as
Fort Star.
As Fort Star, yeah. Battery Number 6, a small lunette with 2 guns on a hill peak located between West Fort and Battery 7, modern exit of Virginia 37 onto Virginia 522, so you guys know where that's at.
If you're from Virginia, I would suppose.
Right. Yeah. Then you have Battery Number 7, a large lunette and trench line with 8 guns on Apple Pie Ridge, west of Apple Pie Ridge Road, modern-day James Wood Road. Nope, James Wood High School, sorry.
Cool.
Right. And then you have Battery Number 8, a grouping of 2 redans downhill west of the Star Fort. Then you had Battery Number 9, which is in an unknown location. Battery Number 10, this was the Confederate Fort Collier, built on the east side of the Martinsburg Turnpike on the north end of town. Then you had fortification at Opequan Crossing, which is called Parkins Mill Battery, a lunette or redan 4 miles south of Winchester at the Opequan River crossing on the Front Royal Turnpike. So they were everywhere.
Right. Well, June 13th, Ewell and his generals were well acquainted with the tactical situation in Winchester, having fought through here under the Lieutenant Jackson during the First Battle of Winchester, which we've covered, and understood the layout of the various fortifications and terrain, masking opportunities on the west side of town. Therefore, Ewell further split his main attack of 2 divisions into 2 basic flanking movements, which was west on the left flanking movement. Units were Early's Division, Brown's Artillery Battalion, 1st Maryland Infantry Battalion, and the Baltimore Light Artillery. They were to move west to Newton on the Valley Pike. And the objective was to approach Winchester from the southeast and seek flanking avenues of approach from the west and northwest ridges of town. Then we had the east flanking movement, which was on the right, with the units of Johnson's divisions, the 16th Virginia Cavalry Battalion. They were going to go northwest to Winchester on the Front Royal Pike. Okay. The objective was to perform demonstrations moving north along the east side of Winchester to divert attention from Early's movements.
Makes sense.
Yes, sir.
Makes sense. Johnson's division, while moving northwest on the Front Royal Pike, drove back federal pickets at the Opequan River crossing around 8:30 a.m. and engaged in cavalry skirmishes at Hoge Run around 9:30 a.m. Johnson's advance stalled under fire from Fort Milroy's heavy guns shortly before noon, and skirmishing and artillery engagements commenced afterward with federal artillery located on the hill near Hollingsworth Mill. Johnson held his position at the point to synchronize with the arrival of Early's division. Well, at least he held.
Well, and then Ewell ordered Early's division to cross west via Nineveh to Newtown and then move north onto the Valley Pike. Arriving at the outskirts of Kernstown, light infantry and artillery engagements commenced around noon. Late in the afternoon, around 4, Early pushed back federal skirmishers at the Valley Pike toll gate, and they had tolls back then too. Right. And after minor engagements, the federal forces retreated north of Abrams Creek.
Well, at least the federal forces are retreating, I guess. I don't know. Is that a win for the...
No.
Nah. Milroy, despite the engagements up to the point, still had no idea that he was facing the entire Second Corps of Lee's army. Milroy, here we go again. Mm-hmm. Come on. Milroy concentrated all of his forces in the 3 forts defending the town, having feared exactly this type of scenario. General-in-Chief Halleck had asked Schenck to order Milroy to fall back from Winchester to Harper's Ferry. Although Schenck had discussed evacuation with Milroy, he left no clear direction for Milroy to evacuate.
Oh, jeez.
Since Milroy had convinced Schenck that his defensive position in Winchester was strong. He's like, well, Halleck don't know shit.
Right. Well, he's not out here.
Right. You don't know.
He's in Washington.
Right. Milroy had previously decided to disregard concerns from Washington because he was confident that the strength of his fortifications would allow his garrison to withstand an assault.
Remember, he
or a
already
siege.
said that he could be here for weeks, even months.
He's like, dude, Halleck don't even know what we got going on
He's
down
already
there.
got it in his head that he can hold out. So Ewell, based on good intelligence from sources in the lower valley, had foreseen that Milroy's only escape route could be successfully blocked and had already anticipated by having Rhodes' division advance on Martinsville via Berryville to cut off Milroy's expected retreat route per his plans from June 11th. That afternoon, having reached Berryville, Rhodes' division and Jenkins' cavalry brigade attempted to capture McReynolds' brigade, which is all the plan so far that they've laid out. But alerted to the Confederate movement by the firing of signal guns by Milroy's main force, McReynolds withdrew to Winchester, where his force occupied the Star Fort north of town. Okay, so a little bit more manpower at the forts, I guess.
Right. Nevertheless, the Confederates were able to capture portions of the federal supply train at nearby Bunker Hill. Ooh. Oh, that's in West Virginia, along with 75 prisoners. Wow. Subsequently, Confederate forces cut the telegram line into Winchester, eliminating Milroy's only line of communication. And by sundown on the 13th of June, Rhodes' division had reached Martinsburg, capturing the town along with 5 federal artillery pieces.
Jeez.
The night of the 13th of June, a storm arose, and a strong rain drenched Winchester and the lower valley all night long.
All night. Well, at dawn on June 14th, Gordon's brigade swept forward to capture Bowers Hill with little resistance. Johnson extended his line to the right against very light opposition.
The North probably wasn't. They're like, dude, it just rained crazy last night. These guys ain't going nowhere. Like, then South was like, dude.
That's why they're idiots.
Right.
They're
like, dude.
There was fitful skirmishing in the streets of Winchester now.
Oh, shit.
Early and Ewell conferred on Bowers Hill and decided on a flanking strategy. Gordon's brigade and 2 batteries are left on Bowers Hill, while Early led his 3 other brigades back to Cedar Creek grade, west beyond Apple Pie Ridge, where it was out of view of federal fortifications, then north over Cloverdale Plantation to Walnut Grove.
Oh. Walnut Grove.
Sorry, guys that are listening to this. Obviously, you don't have the map in front of you, but you can look it up.
Right.
His column was accompanied by 20 guns. While Early made this march, Johnson advanced a line of skirmishers on the right to occupy the Federals' attention, providing diversionary skirmishing all day from 10 a.m. until about 4 p.m.
Confederate batteries on Bowers Hill opened up, touching off a duel with the Federal guns in Fort Milroy. By mid-afternoon, Early's force had gained a position opposite West Fort on Apple Pie Ridge. 8 guns were positioned on the Brierley Farm northwest of the fort, while 12 guns were placed in an orchard southwest of the fort. But by this time, the field had quieted. Within the federal forts, Milroy and his sub-commanders believed that the Confederates had been repulsed from the Winchester. Still seemingly unaware that they were now totally surrounded and cut off.
Oh my gosh, dude. This Milroy. What is it with these Union generals? They all freaking suck, dude. Seriously.
They're like, we still got that cutoff route. Well, they didn't know that Rhodes and his entire division were occupying their primary escape route north.
Jeez.
Oh, no.
About 6 p.m., Early's artillery opened fire on West Fort. The 20 guns fired for 45 minutes, while Hayes stealthily advanced his Louisiana brigade through the corn and wheat fields at the base of Apple Pie Ridge. On command, the brigade rushed forward across 300 yards of open fields and swept upward into the works. After a brief hand-to-hand struggle, the Federal defenders abandoned the works, retreating to Fort Milroy, while their own captured artillery were turned around and used against them. Hayes was supported in the attack by Smith's and Avery's brigade, and Early consolidated his line on West Fort or Flint Ridge, but darkness prevented further gains. You know they ain't doing nothing more in darkness after Old Stonewall. An artillery duel continued until long after dark, though. After the battle, Ewell christened West Fort Ridge as Louisiana Heights in honor of Hayes' brigade. That evening, Ewell located his corps headquarters at the Bowers House, while Early's division pounded away at the Milroy's main fort in an artillery duel well into the night.
You know, I understand the artillery duel just to show that we're both still here, you know. You might get lucky.
You might bust up some walls or something.
But most of it, you're just wasting ammo.
Plus, it prevents people from moving forward.
That's true. Ewell assumed that Milroy might attempt a retreat during the night and ordered Johnson to prevent his escape by marching north and cutting off an escape to the east-northeast via the Charlestown Road, a potential escape route that could possibly bypass the position of the Rhodes Division in the north. Therefore, about 9 p.m., Johnson, with Stewart's and Williams brigades and 8 guns, they commenced a night march north to Berryville Pike and west to Jordan Springs Road, where he turned north toward Stevenson's Depot, a train stop on the Winchester and Potomac Railroad near the intersection of the Martinsburg Pike and the Charlestown Road.
Okay.
Cool. About midnight, the Stonewall Brigade, oh, poor guy, disengaged and joined the rear of the column, leaving one brigade, which was Jones's, astride so he can stay at the Berryville Pike east of town.
Also at 9 p.m., a formal council of war. At a formal council of war, Milroy and his officers made the decision to try to, quote-unquote, cut their way through to Harper's Ferry on the old Charlestown Road, the very same road the Confederate Johnson and his division were marching toward to cut off. Jeez.
I'm going to take my regiment to the Charlestown Road. I'm going to cut my way through Harper's Ferry.
Right. All of the cannons were spiked and their carriages destroyed. Shortly after midnight, the Federal soldiers pulled their colors and left their work so quietly that Early's Confederates did not know they were gone until morning.
Oh, damn.
The column massed in the low ground between Start Fort and Fort Milroy then moved along the railroad line and the Valley Pike toward the Charlestown Crossroad just south of Stevenson's Depot.
Okay. Near dawn, June 15th, 1863, Johnson's skirmishers encountered the heat of the...
Or the head.
Right. Johnson's skirmishers encountered the head of Milroy's retreating column near the intersection of Valley Pike and Old Charlestown Road. Milroy faced his column to the right on the pike and prepared to fight his way out of a murderous trap by enveloping the enemy. Johnson deployed his regiments along Milburn Road.
He went around and was cutting everybody's tongue with the paper cut. You know?
Oh, paper cuts, that's the worst.
Right.
I'd rather get shot with a cannon.
All right.
Johnson deployed his regiments along Milburn Road as they came up and advanced to the railroad and placed 2 guns on either side of the Charlestown Road railroad bridge. The rest of the artillery was deployed on the heights east of Milburn Road. As it grew light, Federal forces made several desperate but uncoordinated attacks against the bridge and the railroad embankment. The Confederates were being steadily reinforced and repulsed each attempt.
Yeah. Nichols' brigade crushed the final Federal attack, and the Stonewall Brigade then came up in line of battle north of the road and advanced to cut the Valley Pike.
Nice.
This was the final blow, and some remaining Federal regiments hoisted the white flag. At some point, Milroy's horse was shot out from under him, and the division as a whole scattered in various directions to the northwest, the north, and the northeast.
Dang.
With some small groups even managing to escape covertly to the southeast toward and through the Manassas Gap into federally controlled territory.
Oh, wow.
They're gone, dude.
Gone. Both Union and Confederate official record reports on casualties are practically identical. Well, Ewell from the Confederates reported, the fruits of this victory were 23 pieces of artillery, nearly all rifled.
Nice.
4,000 prisoners, 300 loaded wagons, more than 300 horses, and quite large amounts of commissary and quartermaster's stores. This prisoner count that Ewell says he has, it seemed to include all the capture of the Federal wounded hospitalized in Winchester. So that don't count.
Right.
Since Ewell's topographer, Jedediah Hotchkiss, counts about 2,000 prisoners from the town, along with an estimate of about 1,500 that escaped to Harper's Ferry, along with more prisoners captured during pursuits from the Confederate cavalry. When Milroy appeared later in Harper's Ferry, he was immediately placed under arrest. Damn.
Yep.
He thought he was cool. He was like, all right. I just need to go check shit out. They're like, oh, we've been waiting for you, mofo.
Come on. Shortly after Schenck reported Milroy's arrest had expired, aide-de-camp Captain Frederick A. Palmer of the 18th Connecticut Infantry reported in an extensive and detailed table of all units summarized. 7 officers and 88 enlisted men were killed, 12 officers, 336 enlisted men were wounded, and 144 officers and 3,856 enlisted men were captured or missing. Thus, while Ewell reports 4,000 captured, the 8th Corps reports 144 officers, and obviously we just said men missing or captured was also adds up to 4,000. Captain Palmer summarized the Union losses a total of 4,443 for 1st, 2nd, and 3rd Brigades from the 2nd Division,
Wow.
8th Corps, including all independent attachments. Johnson's division alone captured 3,500 prisoners in the action at Stevenson's Depot, and this is not surprising since this is the only major engagement of the war in which an entire division column was attacked at night while route marching on a road.
Right.
Okay. Well, General Johnson claimed to have taken 30 prisoners with his opera glass, as well as 11 stands of colors, 175 horses and arms, and accoutrements of every description. Okay, whatever that is.
Right. All right. Some casualty estimates range lower, though. Eicher writes that Confederate casualties were 269, 47 killed, 219 wounded, 3 missing. Union at 3801, 95 killed, 348 wounded, 3,558 missing or captured. Difficult to account for in records are additional numbers of the captured Union soldiers from the many hospitals in Winchester. So, yeah, so if the first reports are right.
It's about 4,000.
Yeah, get the hell out of here. Frick you, Eicher, whoever your name is. The casualty ratio in this engagement of 2 divisions against 1 was an amazing 269 to 4,443 or 0.06%. That's crazy. The most lopsided for engagement of this size in the entire war.
Wow.
It's no wonder that the Confederate artillerist Major Robert Stiles wrote, "This battle at Winchester was one of the most perfect pieces of the work the Army of the Northern Virginia ever did."
Yeah, they had no chance.
Right.
Meanwhile, Milroy and his staff, his cavalry, and other small units, totaling about 1,200, escaped to Harper's Ferry, because of course they did. Additionally, in the days following the battle, 2,700 more turned up in Bloody Run, Pennsylvania.
Oh, wow.
Milroy's command ceased to exist, and the scattered remnants of what was the 2nd Division, 8th Corps.
So 2,700 turned up out of the 4,000 missing?
Or was the ones that all just took off, dude.
Right. They finally, at least they went back.
I don't think that was part of the 4,000 missing.
All right.
Maybe. Milroy's command ceased to exist, and the scattered remnants of what was the 2nd Division of the 8th Corps were assimilated back into the Middle Department, while Milroy was placed under arrest. The Confederates had merely hoped to resupply and forage, but with the easy capture of Winchester, they captured enough artillery and horses to equip a battalion of infantry and cavalry,
Dude, you ain't
including
kidding.
28 guns, which they got 23 at Winchester and 5 at Martinsburg, and 300 horses in total. Crazy.
Yeah. Dude, 300 horses, that's a
They
lot.
just supplied a whole new regiment, dude.
You ain't kidding.
Additionally, the Confederates captured a great quantity of food, clothing, small arms, ammunition, and medical stores in Winchester.
They loved that even more than anything else that they got.
Right, especially that clothing.
Oh, you ain't kidding.
Following this battle, a court of inquiry was held, and both President Lincoln and Halleck desired to know who disobeyed the orders to evacuate Winchester. See? Yeah, because he was told to evacuate, and he fucked himself, dude.
Well, but Schenck let him though.
I guess.
So it has to be on Schenck.
Why is Schenck arrested?
Right. Schenck was the leading officer, but Milroy's the one who decided to,
Idiot.
Well, President Abraham Lincoln wrote to Milroy, and it says this: Major General Milroy, I have never doubted your courage and devotion to the cause, but I have scarcely seen anything from you at any time that did not contain imputations against your superiors and a chafing against acting the part they have assigned you.
Imagine getting this from the president,
Right.
like basically telling you he's a disappointed father.
Right. And he continues on and says, you have constantly urged the idea that you were persecuted because you did not come from West Point. And you repeat it in these letters. Well, I mean, West Point was a huge thing back then. If you didn't go to West Point, you were nothing. This, my dear general, is, I fear, the rock on which you have split. Abraham Lincoln, 29th of June, 1863.
Oh, the nature of the inquiry was later changed from investigating who disobeyed orders to evacuate Winchester to the discovery of the events and nature of the retreat from Winchester. Milroy was exonerated and claimed that his brilliant defensive action at Winchester was instrumental in causing the timing of the Battle of Gettysburg, leading to the overall Union victory for the campaign. Despite this, Halleck insisted that Milroy not be given any more commands. We're like,
No.
we can't trust this guy.
Right.
That's for sure.
He got lucky once.
Right.
The victory at Second Winchester declared the valley of federal troops and opened the door for Lee's second invasion of the North.
It sure did.
That's what he was hoping for. The capturing of ample supplies justified Lee's conceptual plan to provision his army on the march. The federal defeat stunned the North. Secretary of War Edwin Stanton called for additional militia to be federalized. Shortly afterwards, President Lincoln requested 100,000 volunteers to repel the threatened invasion. Damn, Lincoln's like, you know what? We're stopping
need
this.
more.
We're nipping this in the bud. Several fleeing members of the scattered 87th Pennsylvania hastily tramped back to their homes near Gettysburg and in adjoining York County, Pennsylvania, spreading news to local officials that the Confederates were now in the valley in strength with apparent designs on invading Pennsylvania. He's like, dude,
they were right.
these mofos are coming. Governor Andrew Curtin of Pennsylvania, in response to these reports and other military intelligence, called for 50,000 volunteers to protect the Keystone State.
We need your help, guys.
He's like, we need your help.
Immediately following the battle, Ewell dispatched the entire Corps Cavalry Brigade under Jenkins on a raid to Chambersburg, Pennsylvania to forage and reconnoiter.
Damn right.
Ewell placed the 2nd Corps headquarters about 3 miles north of Winchester and then at Mr. Boyd's house near Bunker's Hill.
Damn right, Mr. Boyd.
The captured flag of Fort Milroy was used to create a new Confederate flag, and Ewell and Early attended a christening ceremony in which the new flag was hosted. And the fort officially renamed Fort Jackson in honor of the recently slain former 2nd Corps commander.
Right. Poor guy.
Topographer Jedediah Hotchkiss then commenced an all-day survey, creating his now famous map of the battle. Medals of Honor. During the Battle of Winchester, second one, 2 Union enlisted men and 1 officer received the Medal of Honor for their actions. 2nd Lieutenant James Durham from the 12th West Virginia Infantry, musician John T. Patterson from the 122nd Ohio Infantry, and Private Elbridge Robinson, also from the 122nd Ohio Infantry.
So you had a drummer boy get himself a Medal of Honor, huh? Nice. Good for him.
He probably played his ass off all through cannons and all
Never
types of
stopped.
shit flying through
I
him.
tell you what, you guys need to take a look at Durham. That dude never stopped drumming or fluting.
It was Patterson, but okay.
Yeah, you look at Patterson, he was fluting or drumming away, bud.
It's a rank equivalent to private.
Right.
So, yeah, he was right there. He was wounded while he was rescued. So he tried to rescue a fellow soldier.
Nice.
Look at him. He's only a band guy. Oh, he was taken prisoner and held for a time at Belle Isle and Libby Prison. After being released, he was present at the final battle of Appomattox Courthouse, along with the rest of his regiment. He was mustered out with his company on June 26, 1865. Damn, this dude survived the war and everything. Look at him. Good guy, huh? Then he married and died in 1922 at the... Damn, he was like 80, 75 years old. Good for him, dude. 1922, man. He saw everything, pretty much. Almost. He went from horses to electricity and cars. Mm-hmm. Damn, that's crazy.
That's cool.
Tis. And that's going to do it for us in this episode of Battles of the American Civil War. We're just opening up with the Gettysburg campaign. At the same time, the Vicksburg campaign's freaking rolling on over here.
Man.
I'm telling you, these next few months or next few episodes are going to be freaking crazy.
I don't care. This war should have been over with a year and a half ago.
Clearly.
That's ridiculous. With the stupidity. That's why I say it was definitely political.
What? Well, obviously, we already seen that. They're too afraid to have the political blowback whenever they do something.
Ridiculous.
It's not like what's going to make sense in the war. It's always... Are they going to be mad at me in politics?
Right.
Shit. Coming up next, we got more Gettysburg operations as we got the Battle of Eld. We got the Battle of Middleburg. Continuing the Vicksburg campaign as well. We got the Battle of La Forge Crossing. Then we head back to the Gettysburg campaign with the Battle of Upperville. And then we go back to the Siege of Vicksburg campaign thing. Battle of Hoover's Gap. And a bunch more. Second Battle of Donaldsonville coming up, Battle of Hanover, before we get to the ultimate battle of the Battle of Gettysburg. So we got probably like 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, maybe 6 episodes before we get to Battle of Gettysburg. Wow. It's a long time away. But we're getting there. And all I see is blue, blue, blue on my...
Yeah, it's over. It's been over. There's a little push from the Confederates right there, but... Oh, and then they come in strong, and wow, they come in strong, and in the beginning of 1864, though, and it's over after that.
For another day, another dollar there, and we'll be back next week for definitely the Battle of Brandy Station. No, sorry, we just done the Battle of Eld, Middleburg, and probably La Forge Crossing, maybe even Upperville, or it could be just Eld and Middleburg. Not sure how long these 2 are or 3 are, so... But, we'll be back next week for Battles of the American Civil War with Mother Bitches.
Bang, dang.